Hello, and welcome to the show that, despite the pleas of our families and friends, simply will not stop talking about D&D.
So ready your spells and weapons, grab the shiniest set of your math rocks, and prepare for critical friendship. So today we are going to be discussing part 2 of the questions that we got on that Facebook post. They were questions posed to us specifically about Dan's part of our homebrew world that we share together. Now, granted, some of these I will be answering myself too, or just adding on extra little follow-up questions or bits or helping improvise some stuff. But
yeah, this is quite a open discussion thing here. So
yeah, absolutely. So Dan,
yes.
how do you want to do this?
All right. So again, we had these questions that were sent in from All About D&D, or All About D&D.
All things D&D.
All things D&D. That's right.
Quick disclaimer on the episode. We are currently sitting in 2 separate cars with cords running all over the place so that we can record this. If there is some background noise or some humming or some weird crackles in the audio, I do apologize. We don't have a sound studio.
Yeah, we decided to come down to Blake's side of the world and try to do some fun outdoor stuff here.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're in our vehicles with the windows almost rolled up. It's getting rather warm in mine.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I have my AC on, so
I don't.
So it should be fun. If you need to, turn it on for a little bit, go right ahead.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we are let's just go right into it. So the first question that was posed to us for today, if I can get to it here. All right, so this first question is from Tavo Montoya, and again, she, I believe it was a she, sent in a couple of questions, so we'll get through these. So the first one is, what are some common fantasy cliches and tropes that also appear in the homebrew setting? So it's an interesting thing here because my world is a little bit new.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still working through some of those things of what constitutes the fantasy cliches that I add in here, but I decided to go through and look up some that may apply or may not apply at all. And so I kind of wrote out some ideas for it that so the first couple here are one of the first ones is the chosen one. So basically, like, there's a character that is a chosen hero to defend the world. But mine really doesn't have a particular chosen one. This
You want to use mine? I mean, he's already dead, but
Oh, really?
yeah.
So your side of the world actually had a...
Well, it was more of on a cosmic scale, but
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, no, I was thinking more just for an example, say Aragorn. I feel like could, or maybe even Frodo could have been like the chosen one to carry the ring, or
I mean,
Aragorn.
They kind of both were in their own ways.
Yeah. Or like a lot of times they'll use like prophecies for this kind of thing of like, oh, there is this specific person with these chosen sets of skills and that is meant to save the world. My world is a bit more like when needs arise, there are people who will rise up to take those on.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There was one of the story arcs that I was running on my side of the planet was there's Far Realm Incursion because I love aberrations.
Yeah.
And there was a prophecy of a group of people that were going to stop it.
Mhm.
But it was vague on who it was going to be. Like there was no specifics about said people.
Right.
So there was a NPC that was running these like this gauntlet type of thing to see if anybody was worthy to go and do more, and he would help them and equip them to send them out to go and do this job. And essentially what it ended up being is it was my way of saying like, okay, hey, you know, if you guys all succeed in this, then you guys were the prophesied ones. Hooray! Isn't that wonderful? But like, if your character dies and you have to write in a new one, well, I guess it wasn't about you, was it?
Right. Yeah. I guess that kind of does fit in with my side of the world too, because that's kind of what happened in the beginning of the campaign. Was my players, you guys were heading over to Áluinn to compete in this tournament, and the king was looking for these people to go on this particular quest, but he's still not learning, but still you guys are still gaining his trust at this point.
Sucks for him that he got a bunch of screw ups.
Yeah, I mean, an assassin rogue, a ranger who doesn't know what money is,
a barbarian who's eating raw potatoes like apples.
Yeah, and then a high elf wizard.
Pretty standard high elf wizard,
Yeah, pretty standard.
Not too crazy there.
Yeah.
So a bunch of screw ups and then Aaliyah.
Which is fun because we're coming up with her backstory right now, and it's a lot of fun because you guys just learned that her parents are enchanters and
bigwigs
in the city, the main Áluinn proper. And so it'll come up later with playing through, but it's just a lot of fun to try to figure these things out because she is very much not like her family. She's a bit more structured and a bit more like school learned and, and stuff like that, whereas her family is a little bit more out there.
There is a family of wizards in the Legend of Driss series, and I cannot currently remember their names, like what the family name is, but they're like really eccentric and weird, and like just to get into their like home, you have to pass all these like weird like magic puzzles and stuff, and then like at one point when you walk on the bridge, like instead of going over the top of the bridge, because every time you try you get like stuck or it turns you around or something, you have to go like underneath and then walk upside down on the bottom side of it. Like it's all
gravity
these, like,
is reversed.
Yeah, it's all these like weird wacky like tests just to like go and see them.
Oh man,
and
that's
then
cool.
of course they get there and like everything about the place is like weird and whimsical and goofy, and the dwarf that's with them, Brunner, is just so angry and grumpy the whole time. He's just like, wizards.
Wait, do we talk about him or no?
Brunner, not Bruno.
We don't talk about Brunner. No. It's Cohen.
Been holding on to that one.
But yeah, anyway, yeah.
Sorry, that's just a little tangent. That's what it made me think of when you're like, her family is a lot more
little
whimsical.
Weird. Yeah, a little bit more weird. But yeah. So again, like a couple of the tropes and stuff. I don't know if you care if I go through a couple of other ones, but So I'll just name off a couple and then kind of go through them. So a couple of them is like wise old wizard. The one of the party is an orphan, or things like that, or what's the other one? Like damsels in distress and stuff like that. So for my for my campaign, my world, it's a lot of wizards. There's wizards and magic are very prevalent. So I'm sure there are a few wise old wizards, but at the moment I haven't statted any of them out. So, but like it's definitely, it leans heavy on some of the fantasy tropes that are out there, but not too heavily to where it's like, oh yeah, I recognize that from this, that, the other. Like, no, this is its own thing.
You're not going to be running around and be like, oh yes, that is Gandalf. It's
right,
like,
exactly. Well, I mean, it might, but
you can have like inspiration from Gandalf.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
pretty much like, I mean, I feel like most wizards kind of just do.
Yeah.
At least when you have the wise old wizard.
Yeah.
But then like, you make it unique. You make it your own.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be remiss if I did not try to at least have a wizard in there that had something to do with Gandalf, because Gandalf is amazing. And I can do the voice, so that's great. You shall not pass. Go or collect $200.
A little bit of whiplash there, but okay.
Monopoly Fantasy.
Lord of the Rings Monopoly.
Yeah, there you go. You shall not. That's probably what it is.
I mean, I know I've said it before, but there are too many versions of Monopoly. Like, for crying out loud, there's a Floresville Monopoly.
Oy.
The only place that could even possibly sell that is the one like retail place in Floresville, which is there's a Walmart there. But that's like Floresville, for those of you who don't know, tiny little town, real close to where I live. They have their own version of Monopoly.
Yeah.
Why?
Because why not? Why not?
I saw it in the Floresville Walmart one time, and it was just like, who is this for? The 3 people who live here?
Yep. That's pretty much it.
Wild.
One of the ones I definitely wanted to get to in this question was the different races. That's one of the tropes that I looked up, was that there's different races in fantasy worlds, and which obviously in D&D there are plenty of races to choose from,
a whole bunch.
So at the moment, you guys have met some elves, some half elves, dwarves, genasi, orcs, half orcs, and then obviously you guys are you have a Yuan-ti, a kobold, a high elf, and a lizard folk.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a bunch, but I am looking forward to you guys meeting some new ones, because maybe not new necessarily, but like I want to try to homebrew one or two things, because my world is based a lot around dragons. And so you're going to meet a lot of dragonborns and stuff like that around the world.
Will we be encountering a Dracotar?
A Dracotar?
It's in one of the Kobold Press books that I've let you borrow at some point.
Okay.
It's like a centaur, but the bottom, like the top half is a dragonborn, bottom half is a drake.
Okay. I really have to read through that book some more, because I mean, I don't see why not. Yeah. There's so many things to choose from. Like, so you guys have already come across something that it's not necessarily a race, but it is a species of dragon called a moldrake.
We killed it.
Yeah, you killed it.
We very much unalived it with prejudice.
Yeah. So they're going to be very, very much prevalent around, and like I said, I want to try to homebrew something where it's some kind of dragonborn, but just something different. You know what I mean?
We can bounce some ideas off of each other because I had a kingdom on my side that was called the Tanin Collective. That it was all draconic races.
Oh, okay.
And one of the things that they did that kind of put them at odds with another kingdom called Illustratum was they would magically crossbreed different types of dragons and different types of dragon kin. And so like their armies were made up of like half dragon and dracotars, and they came up with like the kobold variant known affectionately and canonically as the swobold.
Right.
Stuff like that. And so like they had all kinds of like mutated dragon hybrid creatures.
Yeah.
And so like in on my side at least, that's kind of where it all came from, because the Tanin Collective just screw around with magic and
yeah.
and draconic magic specifically.
Yeah. And not only that too, but one of the things I was Ariel and I were talking about today and over the last couple of weeks where we were building some of this stuff out was one of the heroes that you that we had talked about. His name is Cadence.
His name Cadence.
He named Cadence. He's actually from your side of the world.
Ooh.
He came over to explore and be.
Is he still alive?
He is not still alive in today's day and age,
okay.
But King Arendor is the only one that's
from the map mages.
Yeah. Except for one that you'll find out about later. But where was it? Oh yeah, so it could very easily have been, something where the dragons from your side of the or dragonborns or dragon
kin.
Yeah, from your side of the world populated over here somehow.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, the way I had it set up, Tanin and the Illustratum were fairly close to the edge of the map that I had, and that was kind of where we were going to split and like cut our world into the two places, like you take this half, I got this half.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be too far out of the question, because there is a pretty brutal war that people have left on both sides and been like, I don't want to have anything to do with this anymore. So like even on the other continent, which was pretty far across the seas, you had people from Tanin that were there. And so it wouldn't be that far-fetched for, some of them fled and went your way.
Yeah.
And
maybe some of the magic from my side
that could
touched on the...
That could even be some of where they're harnessing it from.
Yeah.
But Tanin and Illustratum were some of the much, much older, like, well-established ancient civilizations.
Right. Okay.
Whereas, like, the city that I had the whole campaign going around was fairly new. Tanin and Illustratum had been there for, like, thousands of years.
Gotcha. Okay.
Sweet. Variations of them.
Yeah.
Same name, but, cultures change. And
right,
whatnot.
Of course.
The war that they've been having has only been going on for a few decades.
Makes sense. I'll just touch on one more real quick, because we kind of talked about it a little bit already. One of the other tropes is bad guy is a dark wizard.
I thought bad guy was dragon.
Bad guy is dragon, but there is another bad guy.
Yeah, there's obviously more than one bad guy.
Do you remember who I said was the bad guy, or I don't know if I ever said it in the other episode or not.
I don't know that you brought it up.
Okay, all right, never mind then.
Okay.
That let's just put it this way: one of the map mages doesn't quite have the same heart as the rest of them.
and is also the one that's not dead?
Possibly.
Possibly.
Okay, definitely.
Well, like you just said one of them's not dead, and then you just talked about one in the present tense.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Come on, dude.
I'm not very good at keeping secrets, all right?
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. But yeah, if we want to move on to another question. So the next question, I'm actually going to ask you to help me out with this one because I'm not as versed in the deeper lore of D&D to be able to answer this question thoroughly.
Mm-hmm.
So the next question was again from Tavo Montoya. It was, what's different about the setting that would surprise anybody used to classic campaigns like Forgotten Realms or Greyhawk? So I do have some answers to this, but I would like to know what your thoughts are and see if you have anything that you've noticed from the campaign or anything that we've talked about that might be different from the lore that you know.
Well, so one thing that I would say stands out very, very strongly is I can't fully speak for Greyhawk. I know more about Forgotten Realms, and oftentimes the stuff I know about Greyhawk kind of blends in my head. They kind of mush together, and I'm like, wait a minute, was that Forgotten Realms? Was that Greyhawk? Which one? And
Yeah.
I don't always know. So if I say something that's incorrect, get over it. It's my podcast, not yours. That was to the audience, not to Dan.
Yeah, I figured that much.
But one of the things that I've noticed that's a lot more, I don't know, that one of the big differences is that the question of divinity is a lot more in the air.
Mm.
So yeah, one of the things that I've noticed that's a pretty big difference is with like Forgotten Realms and stuff like that, they have these well-established gods that everybody, like, whether they worship them or follow them or believe in their tenets or whatever, everybody kind of understands that, like, okay, these deities are a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like Drizzt in the beginning of the books, he's like, I don't follow any gods, but he doesn't question whether or not the Spider Queen Lolth is real.
Right.
Like, he was raised in Drow society. He has seen the effects of the Spider Queen, and he hates her, but he never really questions whether or not she's real.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's introduced later on to Mealiki, who is one of the nature gods in the Forgotten Realms, and ends up kind of following her tenets.
Okay.
And so it's like, it's established that everybody kind of agrees, like, yeah, these gods are real.
Yeah.
They're out there, they're real, they do their things, they affect reality, stuff like that. Our world, it's everybody generally has some kind of faith,
Mm-hmm.
but there's that question that we have of, like, okay, is there one God and then a bunch of, like, powerful beings, or is it, you know, one greater God and then a bunch of, like, you know, more powerful ones, and then you have, like, lesser gods, and then under them you have celestials and demons and whatever. Like,
Yeah.
that's up in the air, you know. That's more in question than it is in a lot of other fantasy genres that you'll read. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you have something like Dragon Age, where, like, even like you have, like, the regular realms, which is like Orlais, Ferelden, you know, stuff like that, and then you have Tevinter, and they're opposed to each other, but they both still believe in the Maker.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They believe that there's different teachings that come from the Maker, but, like, it's pretty well established and understood that, okay, there's the maker. This is our God, right? Whereas in ours, it's not uncommon for people to just be like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it reflects real world situations here because in the real world, it's very much up in the air where like there's people like us that believe there is one God.
Yeah, like I'm pretty sure of my belief.
Right,
like,
yeah. But there's also that underlying like human doubt of like we've never seen it or like it like it affects us and it affects our world, but like not to the degree that D&D does.
You don't have clerics walking around and using divine intervention to literally call on their deity to like, hey, this guy's ticking me off. Can you like wipe him out for me in a spectacular fashion? Like,
I mean, that happened back in the Bible days, kind of, but you know, like nowadays it's a little bit more up in the air.
A couple cities,
a couple of peoples.
One time the entire globe.
Yeah. Yep. So like, it definitely mirrors life because like as much as we can know, we know, but we don't. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of people out there that don't know and are a bit more like skeptical about any kind of God being existing.
Yeah, without getting too theological, that's where a good bit of faith comes into play.
Right, exactly. Whereas in D&D, and I would say even in my campaign, there is affecting of the gods on the world. Absolutely. But there are people who don't see it.
Yeah.
And people that can probably explain it away, quote unquote, with magic or science or whatever you want to call it. But there is definitely an influence.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's
cool.
I would say one of the other things, and it also has to do with like the deities and stuff like that. As far as I know, in Forgotten Realms and in Greyhawk, so like you have, you know, deities and, you know, you have others that are vying for their power and stuff like that. And if one of them dies, it's more akin to like a person dying, where it's like, okay, you know, he died, but like somebody else took up his mantle, somebody else took up his place. Like it's not like there's an empty throne in the heavens or whatever. You know, it's like the death god in the Forgotten Realms has changed so many times. At one point, 3 wizards challenged the god of death and were victorious to the point where the death god was like, okay, you guys can have it. And he stayed as kind of like a powerful advisor, but gave them the different aspects of his divine domain of death. And then it changed again because, you know, some people went and didn't like those death gods and got rid of them, and now there's Kelemvor, and like it changes. So like when a god or a deity dies in the Forgotten Realms, it's just kind of like, okay, he's dead, whatever. Somebody else takes his mantle and we move on. In my setting, at least, when something like that dies, yes, something else takes its place, but in the memories of mortals, it's always been that way. So like they can't remember the first god of creativity because he was corrupted and had his mantle stripped from him and was banished to the far realm.
Okay.
When he came back, the second god of creativity basically gave, like, because the gods were not allowed to intervene. They can't come down and like stick their hands in the earth and mess around with stuff. They're forbidden from that.
Yeah.
And to try to protect humanity from what this entity was doing, because it was no longer a god, but it was godlike in power. It had the powers of a greater god. He gave up his mortality and his mantle and stepped down into the world and ended up being killed for it. Because after he gave it up, an oracle basically told him the future, like, you're not the one to do this. Like, you're going to fail.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay, well, I got to do what I can anyways. And ended up dying for it. And it ended up being his son that stopped and re-banished this being out of reality. Because basically one of the reasons why the deities can't interfere is because they can't bring this being, or can't or won't bring this being into reality, because it's world ending.
Yeah.
And so the only people that will or can is mortals. And it's like, okay, fine. If you wanted this, you got it. Y'all deal with it.
Yeah.
Like, this is kind of your problem now. And so he gave up his divinity and then ended up dying over it, but had a son during his mortal life who ended up being the one to push this being back out of reality, re-banish it to the far realm. But that god, his name was Diophis.
Okay.
That god has just been forgotten. Like, the physical evidence of his existence on Earth or on the world is still there, but nobody remembers him because he died. And when a concept, which is kind of what the gods are, when a concept dies, like, how do you kill a concept? You have to completely erase it from all living memory.
Right.
And so the only one that's left that even remembers him is his grandson.
Okay.
And he's still alive because he turned himself into an arch-lich or a demi-lich to basically keep an eye on reality and make sure that nobody's trying to open up a gateway to the far realm and let this thing back in.
Yeah.
And so, like, that I would say is one aspect that's kind of interesting. So I guess I would say, like, maybe in the perspective of your side of the world, like, it's more of like when one of these celestials that is over one of these domains perishes, then you would forget that one ever even existed, and a new one would take its place. And then in your mind, so that there's no disruption, there's no like, everything's changing because it's got a new mind in control of it. Reality just kind of auto adjusts and rewrites itself to, okay, this thing has always been here.
Yeah.
Even if it hasn't been.
Also, like, the other thing about it too is that
it allows for retconning.
Well, it allows for retconning, but also the way I've presented it especially in this last session, was the angel that gave Ozzy his powers presented it as the main god, Irasil, like, basically does through the angel gives power to his clerics and his, whatever it is, divine soul sorcerer,
basically a cleric.
Yeah. But I guess it kind of depends on what you believe and what happens to make that happen, because on my side of the world, again, like, that the main god, Irasil, grants the celestials and the angels and demons and stuff, maybe not the demons, but the powers to bestow on people.
Yeah. And it doesn't necessarily have to grant it to demons, seeing as how they're usurping power anyways, so it's kind of just like
right, yeah. Like, they kind of just steal it, yeah.
Yeah.
But basically, like, it's like what you said, if a particular concept dies, or one of the angels dies,
Irasil's going to put another one in its place.
Yeah, Irasil can fix that.
And so that there's no mind-breaking, like, adjustment for Ozzy trying to figure out what happened to the other one. It just auto rewrites his memories to, no, it's always been this thing.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And that's kind of one that I've not really seen in other things. Like, there's been other media where it's like, okay, there was a god of this and it died, and then, people either forgot about it or its domain was absorbed by others, but, like, it's still there. And it's like, no, this one, it erases from existence.
Yeah.
And so, like, there's some writings and some stuff like that about Diophis, and there's some items that he created, some like legendary artifact items that were created by him in his war against this entity. But when it really comes down to it, it's like, okay, let me try to find out what Diophis is, because I have this item called the last word, or the last will of Diophis. Okay, but what is it? What is Diophis? You can't find it.
Right.
Like, nobody knows. Even a creature that's ancient probably might not even know, but if you speak to his grandson, then he can tell you, because he's magically shielded himself from forgetting, because he wanted to be like a repository of all like information and knowledge, like to the extent that he's able to be.
Yeah.
And then also wanted to be able to see everything. So his specialty was divination magic.
Yeah.
So even if he were to forget something like that, he could potentially divine it back out.
Yeah. Cool.
But what about you? What are some of the and again, there's no like massive differences.
No.
It's all kind of like,
It's all D&D.
yeah, it's all D&D, it's all fantasy. There's not, we're not reinventing the wheel here.
Yeah.
Neither of us have enough arrogance in us to believe that we've created something so incredibly unique that nobody's ever thought of it before. Because I'm sure if we look around in enough books, I'll find that concept about dying deities in one of them. You know,
right. Yeah. There's nothing new under the sun.
There's nothing new under the sun, Solomon.
Yeah. I mean, so we went a little more in depth in that than I was expecting. So I'm looking
you let me talk for 2 seconds and I end up word salad.
I gave you a cookie.
Gave me cookie, Schmidt. I broke it.
Oh man. It was a laugh and a cough. Anyway.
It was a laugh.
Yep.
What a laugh.
Or calf.
What a laugh.
It's a laugh. Having a laugh.
We're just having a laugh, aren't we? This is why we have like 3 friends.
But yeah, so again, my answers to these are a little bit more simplistic. To two of the things that I have is that the fact that in Áluinn, everyone speaks Draconic. It's a magically induced or imbued.
Draconic is common.
Yeah, Draconic is common. And it's kind of funny because I was talking to Ariel on the way here. I was like, everyone except her speaks Draconic anyway.
Naturally, yeah. So, we all chose reptilian races that speak the Draconic language.
Yeah. So we were trying to think like, well, what could make it even more different? And it's like, well, I guess it's a radius of space in Áluinn where it's Draconic, but then all of a sudden, if you guys travel outside of that radius, you guys are gonna keep speaking Draconic, and Aaliyah's like, wait, what?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, because originally I justified the reason Worm spoke Common was because, so in the Underdark, he only ever spoke Draconic. That was his people's language. And then he popped up in Áluinn somewhere, and I justified his ability to speak Common as, okay, the person whose home he popped up in and who kind of like took him in and taught him what she could about society, taught him how to speak Common. So I should probably take that off of his character sheet that he can speak Common, because Common here is Draconic. So he would have popped up speaking the same language, maybe with just like regional differences or something like that. Yeah,
so not specifically, because like I said, I think we changed it to we are going to change it to it's a radius of area.
Okay, so
where the coastal areas are going to be more diverse in their speech. So
what was the town we made was called Duskport, yeah?
Correct.
That was pretty far away from the center, yeah?
Yes, it's up in the.
I'll just have that be where he's
actually,
from.
No, yeah.
It makes sense because he came in on an airship anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So Worm could be from Duskport, and that could be far enough away that it's not magically induced common.
Right.
And so he had to learn a different language.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
That makes sense a lot.
And it probably wouldn't have been too big of a stretch for her to be like the lady whose home he just appeared in, to be like, okay, she does speak some Draconic and was able to use that as like the building, like maybe isn't fluent in it.
Right, yeah.
But being so close to Áluinn, you have to know some.
Yep.
And so she used that as like a building block for teaching him the rest of the common tongue.
Yeah. I like it. I like it a lot.
Makes sense. That's why I like this podcast. It helps us not only develop the world, but also characters.
It's exactly why I wanted to do this set of episodes.
Yeah.
And again, one last part of the differences that I would say is that magic is a more mundane activity for Áluinn proper and surrounding cities. But as you travel out further, it's a little bit less common. But inside of Áluinn proper, I think we had talked about it in the last episode.
Last one. It's like everywhere.
It's like
wondrous magic items are commonplace.
Yeah. Like I'm gonna go hang up this sign outside my shop. Oh, I'll just put on my boots of levitation and
it's Leviosa, not Leviosa.
Oh. Stop it, Ron.
Stop it.
But yeah, so that I think those are the major differences so far that have come across so far.
Popped up.
Yeah.
So our next couple of questions are from David Livingston. And he actually asked us a couple. We're not going to go for all of them because there are other people that submitted questions. But a couple of these we can burn through pretty quick, and then there's a longer question that we can spend a little bit more time marinating on. So the first one we're gonna get to from him is, what are the banking and financial institutions? Do you have banks? Because currently my bank is your wife's character toting around my gold in her backpack because I have a buttload of gold.
Yeah. So I thought on this one for a while because I was like, a lot of times, as far as I've seen in any D&D session I've ever listened to or run or been a part of, there's not really ever been any kind of banking institutions that I've heard of.
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, it's like the kingdom has or each town may have a treasury of sorts that is more so this is the town's money. And then the people that get paid from there, but they
can keep it there.
They keep their money in their homes.
Okay.
Or on their person, if they're adventurers or whatever, they put it on their person.
Yeah.
If they have a home, they can keep it there. But that's basically my thought process of that is just, unless there's a reason to specifically have a bank, I thought it might be an interesting side quest for someone to be stealing money from people's homes or something, and then they realize, oh, we kind of need a place to store our money so that it doesn't get stolen.
Yeah.
Something like that. But at the moment, there's not really been any reason for that. So it's just like, there's no banks.
So what's actually funny is in the city that I had made for the homebrew that I was running, I actually made a banking system.
You did?
The thing was, nobody ever asked. Like, I guess I probably should have like said something and made it like known that there was a bank in Zorse.
Like, oh, hey, what's that building? Oh, it's
Yeah.
the bank.
Yeah, because they also like they never like had a home or anywhere to stay. Like, they would always come back to the city.
Yeah.
But they generally either stayed in this one NPC's house, and when I say house, it was like a hovel. It was like 2 rooms.
Yeah.
And those 2 rooms were separated by a curtain. But yeah, so he had his room where he kept his food, and he would prepare it and he would eat it, and then he had like basically it was living room, dining room, kitchen all in this one very small room. And then he had like a bed over in this little like niche in the wall that he would like move the curtain and he would go in there and sleep.
Yeah.
And so it was like and there was like 6 people in that party, and they were all just crashing at this dude's house.
Jeez.
And so he was kind of just like, you know, you're gonna have to find somewhere else to stay at some point, yeah. But what I was actually gonna do is he was going into business with one of the tavern keepers in the city proper, because he was kind of in the slums area, and he was just gonna like, okay, well, I'm gonna be living at the tavern because I've just bought, you know, I've bought half of it. I'm 50% owner. I'm gonna live in the tavern. Would you like to buy this place? Like, just regain some of his money back, and then like, all right, I'm out. You guys can have it. Like,
Yeah.
do whatever you want with it. And then
Make an add-on.
well, and they were also applying for like an adventurers guild status.
Yeah.
Where they would have
Man, that's something I need
yeah.
to come up with.
Well, where they were going to have people like actually come to them with jobs instead of going out and seeking jobs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the only problem is, so they got denied. Here's why. They listed on their general form how many people were leading it. It was them. The guy, one of the guys, his character couldn't read or write, but he would not admit to anybody that he could not read or write.
Right.
So he grabbed his part of the form to fill out and just scribbled on it. Just took a pen, scribbled on it, and then was like, "Oh, I'll turn in the paperwork. It's fine." And so he brought it in, and it listed how many people were going to be running this group, but for one of the applicants' things, it was just nonsense scribbles and gibberish.
Yeah.
It was no actual, like, it would have a letter here and there because he'd like copy a letter that he saw somewhere. But and they were like, okay, you didn't give us all the information, application denied. And then they left town before they could go and deal with that, because he still would not admit that he could not read and write.
Yeah.
He had finally admitted it to Atreya before the campaign fell apart.
Right.
And it was because she's kind of just like a mom character. Like she just kind of takes care, like her whole thing is she wants to protect everybody. That's why she's traveling with these people. She wants to make sure they're safe and all that. And he had finally admitted to her, nobody else, that he couldn't read or write. And she had told him, okay, let me help you learn.
Yeah.
And so that was going to be a thing in like their downtime. They were going to teach him how to read and all that stuff. And then the campaign fell apart and he never ended up knowing how.
Oh, poor guy.
Yeah. It was pretty funny because they filled out the paperwork and then went to go do a job. And I was like, this is going to get denied. and I told them that at one point. They were like, when we get back, we'll have like a guild status and like all this other stuff. And I was like, no, you won't. Why not? I said, because Glint didn't fill out his paperwork, dude. Like, he doodled all over it.
It's like, what's your name?
It says here on your paperwork that your name is
the Cave of
It's the castle.
Oh, the castle. No.
Maybe he died while he was writing it. Well, if he died while he was writing it, he wouldn't have bothered to write out. beautiful.
I love that movie.
But yeah, there was actually a banking system on my side of the world that just never got used.
That's kind of why
I had a whole financial district.
Yeah, that's kind of why I'm like, I don't feel like building that out because I don't think people would use it. Like
Wormwood, because he'd be like, I'm just gonna store all of my stuff, like all of my gold here, because I don't know how it works, and I don't trust myself with it. So just here.
Do kobolds have hordes?
They can.
They can. Okay.
It depends. So sometimes they're affiliated with dragons, so they hoard stuff and then take it to the dragon.
Right.
Sometimes they will have like a collective hoard that's their people's.
Right.
But they share everything, so
it's a collective hoard.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a hoard, but it's more of like a central bank that everybody can pull out of.
Right. Okay.
Like a friend fund.
Cool. All right. Want to move on to the next one?
Yeah. Go ahead.
All right. So again, this is still from
David Livingston.
Yeah. So he also asked, what are some pastimes? Actually, let me go back to the actual question.
Says, what are some popular pastimes and hobbies?
All right. Well, you just said it anyway. Okay.
I did.
And then also, I think there's another one that is there a popular sports league or professional sports league?
Yeah.
Is that from the same?
It says, it says, are there anything akin to a professional sports league?
Okay. So we kind of lumped those two questions in together because it's very similar. So a lot of what I have...
Baseball!
Yeah, it's baseball!
We all go down to the town square to watch the public executions. The guy uses finger of death.
Oh, no. Yep, that's what it is.
As we talked about
we talked about
in our
last
spells
episode. Yep. Yeah, no. I mean, that's possible, but at the moment, no. What I wanted to do was it's a medieval style world, so they have things like the sword and joust and hand-to-hand combats and stuff like that, like they had in the tournament.
Yeah, the
but
tournament
more
that we were involved in.
Yeah, so there's more like professional leagues of those kinds of things. So they have fighting rings and stuff like that.
So it's not so at the one we went to.
It was more of an open.
It was a bunch of adventurers, but not necessarily the guy that's the professional jouster, because like he's really good at the joust, but not really anything else.
Yeah.
So the only guy that they had that was that way was the dude that I embarrassed with archery.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Thank you, multiple nat 20s in a row.
Yeah, exactly.
That was wild.
So he probably quit after that.
Some random kobold from Duskport just shows up, shot my arrow out of the air, and ricocheted it into the bullseye of his target. And then he did it to the other guy.
And then he did it again.
To someone else. While yelling loudly, trick shot.
I forgot about that. That was great.
You know what? I quit. I thought I was really good at this. I quit.
Yeah, and I would say he would probably be one of those like equivalent to a football player here of like he makes millions of dollars.
Yeah.
For being an archer.
But just got absolutely embarrassed by some nobody.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, no, I quit. I am the weakest link. Goodbye.
It's like the top paid professional football player goes against like a 3 foot tall.
She goes against Muggsy Bogues.
3 foot tall high schooler that just embarrasses him on the football field, just tackles him, pounds him into the dirt, and is just like, yeah, boy. Trick shot.
Trick shot. Yeah. So yeah, I actually wanted to come up with something for this. I don't think we'll get into the rules or anything for it here, but I want to make a rugby style game And I think that would be cool to collaborate on that and make up the rules for that at some point.
That definitely sounds like a thing Atreya would be interested in.
Right? I feel like that could be a really cool, like, medieval Magic style rugby. Like, I don't know if there'd be Magic involved necessarily, but, like, it'd be cool to just have that as a professional sports league.
If you wanted a magical style sport, there's actually two different ones.
Quidditch.
No, there's two different ones in canon D&D.
Okay.
One of them is called Mage Tower.
Okay.
They're in Strixhaven.
Oh,
the
right.
curriculum of chaos yeah,
because it's like a Harry Potter style.
Yeah, and I have that book.
Yeah,
and there's two different magical sports that they play in that wizarding school that we could probably take some of the rules of those and adapt them and have like a more like martial style one that's not magic involved, and then have, okay, this is the one where we let you take magical steroids and go crazy.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I think that'd be awesome.
Like, how am I supposed to compete with a wizard that knows haste? Like, it's 100 yards.
By being a wizard who knows haste.
It's a 100-yard dash. Of course he's going to win.
But it could also be like, oh, they have the equipment for like the magic items that people use during the games.
Like have like a enchanted gauntlet that like helps you like attract the ball or like do other things like that. Like,
boots of haste.
Like a catcher's glove, but magical.
Yeah.
Like helps you with the catching and throwing if you're not the most athletic, but you are like good with aim.
Right, yeah. Yeah. I think that'd be fun.
That would be fun. We'll work on that.
Cool.
That sounds like a fun group project.
Yeah. But that's pretty much all I had for those questions.
As far as like hobbies and stuff like that goes, I know that like at least me as a player character, his hobby is knitting. So like everywhere he goes and like buys yarn, because he actually learned how to do it in the Underdark with spider silk, which now that we've made it canon that Taz was his mentor makes that a little bit more weird.
A little bit more weird, but a little bit more canon.
I mean, it makes sense because Worm is a weird dude. And he's like, hey, I need more butt rope.
Yes, I am all for this.
He doesn't come from me, butt. Yeah, so it made it a little bit more weird, but also right up Worm's alley.
Yep.
So the other question we were going to get into from David Livingston was, what are the stereotypes people of different cities think about each other? And what would, like, for example, what would people from city A say about people from city B?
Okay.
Or what do they think they're like, or like...
Yeah.
I mean, we've already kind of done one, like, in talking about the sports, like, some random kobold from Duskport. Because, I mean, it's way out in the boonies, so it's possible that, like, you know.
So, again, like, Duskport is going to be one of the coastal towns. So that's actually kind of one of the first points we made on the way here. So the coastal regions are actually the original inhabitants of Áluinn. So that they're the longest running people that
they were here
have lived here.
The predated the kingdom, so their cultures would be different.
Right. So most I'll just read what we have here.
Yeah, go for it.
Most of these individuals were content with remaining at the coastal regions and not exploring further inland. So this was way back in the day. So very Moana in their thinking of like, we're in paradise. We don't need anything else. Like, we don't need to travel. We don't need to go outside the reef, you know?
The beaches give us all we need.
Exactly. The coconuts, what?
Consider the coconut.
The what?
Consider the trees.
The island gives us what we need.
I got 2 daughters. I know all the songs.
Oh, yeah. I have one son, but I love that movie anyway. So Oh, okay. So, but as the youth of the community grew and more airships transported individuals from the other side of the world, there was a desire and a need to expand and explore further inland. The majority of the coastal region folks that remain still firmly believe in that solidarity of this is where we need to be.
Mm-hmm.
So the people in Áluinn proper are more of that high society, like high elf wizard style people that
Have almost an arrogance to them.
Yeah, so they
very, very affluent.
Exactly. Yeah. So they kind of look down. Not all of them. Like the king is still very, grounded in reality, but there are some that have lost that idea of hard work and stuff because of the magic being so prevalent.
See somebody like using a saw and a hammer and nails to build a building, and they're like, "Why don't you just use your wand of mold earth, dear?"
Right. Exactly.
You can shape the stone.
So yeah, like
he can't even use a scroll of magnificent mansion.
Yeah. So there's definitely some dynamics that are little wouldn't necessarily say I'm not gonna say it. Never mind.
So here's a question. With having a king that comes from more humble origins and is still fairly grounded, he's probably developed some of these habits, but is still fairly grounded. What does he think about that, and is he trying to push back against that more aristocratic lifestyle, or that seeing themselves as above the people that are further out?
I think, like you said, he's taken on a little bit of the high status, but is still grounded enough to realize that there is some issues with how people act, definitely. So I think because of his humble beginnings, he can put on a air of
humility.
An air of authority, but at the same time is humble enough to realize that he's only one person and can't fix everything. So I think he tries where he can, but not to the point, because he has so much responsibility that he can't just.
I mean, yeah, that's why he's gone and grabbed this ragtag party of, at the beginning we were 4th level adventurers.
Yeah.
And said, "Hey, I need you guys to take care of some stuff for me."
Exactly. And he's sending you on certain things to basically be like, well, you need to build your strength, but I also need to trust you and make sure you are doing the things that I need you to
testing
do.
our worth.
Yeah, exactly. So he is definitely on the side of, he knows what hard work is. He knows he knows where people come from, and he doesn't look down on people for that. But there are definitely people in Áluinn proper who do.
Yeah.
And there are
very Hunger Games capital-esque.
Kind of, yeah. And then obviously in like the different ecosystems, there's different styles of people, different.
Well, yeah, I mean, just in living spaces alone, you would have to have different homes and different ways of building them, and then different ways of like your day-to-day life, just because of the environment you're in. Like,
exactly.
We're here in Texas. We live very different lives than somebody who lives in New York, just because we have very different climate.
Yeah.
Like
people out here can't drive in the rain, but people in New York can drive through a blizzard.
Yeah, but also somebody from New York steps outside in the middle of Texas August and they think, "Oh my God, we're dying," and it's like, "Oh, there's a cool front out right now, man. Like it's only 100.
It's only 110.
It's only 115. Like we had a cool front blow in last night. Yesterday it was 126."
I still laugh. My brother came out here well, on a mission trip to Mexico at one point, and he was like, yeah, in the sun it was like 130 degrees. In the shade it was like 110.
Yeah. The shade is just diet sunlight.
Yeah. And then he also came home with like poison oak all over his entire body.
Ooh.
And so we're like, well, where did you get it from? Did you get it from Mexico or did you get it from Texas? Like,
doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. It still sucks.
Yeah.
But like,
yep.
It's just those types of stereotypes, though. It's like, well, you know, it's super hot here, but it's always cold there. Like,
yeah.
And there's certain people that can be like, well, that's better, or this is better, or you know,
yeah.
Things like driving here and driving there.
I mean, I could walk out on the street of San Antonio and just like have like a red Solo cup and dump a cup of ice on the street, and there would be 15 accidents just due to a couple ice cubes, and that would all be within the span it took for those cubes to melt, which is like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
There would be 15 different accidents, and there would be a news report about ice on the roads.
Yeah.
Like,
I still laugh at the Snowmageddon a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Snowmageddon here was what, 3 inches of snow?
If even.
If that.
Yeah, like we had a couple inches of snow and the entire state shut down.
Yeah. Friggin' New York, you get 6 feet of snow and people are still like, oh, you still coming to work?
Yeah. Yeah, like I was leaving my house to drive to work, and I got a call from my boss like, hey, don't come in, because the Air Force base I was working on was shut down. The U.S. Air Force base was shut down because of a couple inches of snow. Yeah. And I was like, wait, really? He was like, yeah, they shut it down. You can't get in the gates. Yeah. Don't bother coming in.
So, all right. So
and I was like, okay, well, do you know when they're going to open back up? He goes, I'll call you when they do. Stay home. And I was like, all right, well, I'm going to go play with my kids out in the snow. Like, happy week for me.
Yeah. So this is kind of weird to get into because it does fit in with this conversation in certain ways. But like one of the things I was going to say is that like it's all in how the different cultures deal with it, because or the different cultures and climates, because the climate here, the roads and stuff are not built for cold. They're not built for snow and the rain.
We got a lot of those big overpasses that it gets barely into freezing and they ice over real bad.
Yeah.
And you're,
not only
40 feet up in the air, you don't want an accident on that.
And they're built for the heat, so they have what is it? Is it here that has the rubber? No, it's not here. So in New York, they put rubber in the streets, and so in the Northeast.
Yeah,
but if you put rubber here
in the streets, they'd melt.
It would melt. So it's not made for those cold, wet conditions.
So somebody from your desert oasis area would have very different views on just the world in general than somebody who lives in your tundra.
Exactly. So there's those dynamics of, there's power dynamics, there's different building dynamics, there's different
resources come from different biomes.
Exactly. So it's there's definitely some stereotypes. Obviously they're not all written out at the moment, but I can definitely see where these threads are going of like, those desert people aren't gonna like those tundra people too much.
Yeah.
And they're right next to each other.
Or maybe they do, because maybe the oasis is fed by snowmelt. And so they kind of see it as like it's awful and we don't want to go there, but because desert and tundra are the same climate or the same terrain, just different temperature.
Right.
And so they might even have some similarities in that, where it's like, okay, like but they realize like they need each other, because it's like, okay, you're oasis is literally fed by snowmelt. And so it could even be like a thing where like when they're getting rid of snow in an area, like they have some mage use like control water or something and push it over towards the desert area because they know that like if there's a bunch of snow built up here, like right about where the change happens, it'll melt and it'll go to the oasis and give them more fresh water.
Yeah. I like you.
Sometimes I say smart things.
So it's funny too because Ariel and I we were talking about this stuff on the way over, trying to finalize
Hammer
things.
it out.
And like this was not even something that we thought about. Like that's really cool. I like it.
Sometimes we come up with a good idea when we use our collective one brain cell and share it.
Well, Ariel has more than that.
I meant you and I.
Oh, yeah.
So our final question for this episode is going to be coming to us from Scott Pearson. And he asks, where do the smiths get the ore to create weapons and armor?
Right.
I got this one, Dad. I'm kidding. Let me tell you how your world works.
Okay, dude.
Listeners out there, do not be that player.
No.
If your DM tells you it is a certain way, shut up.
So this kind of actually works back into a little bit of the stereotypes question because we had written out some of the what do you call it? Some of the races and stuff that would be living in these different biomes and stuff like that, and what they actually do there.
Uh-huh.
So like in the rainforest district, it's commonly like wood elves, halflings, genasi, green dragonborn, kind of stuff like that, and they this isn't necessarily the ores and smithing stuff, but like what they actually do there is like they focus on a lot of nature and a lot of like creating poisons and potions and stuff like that from the nature around them and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
In the tundra, there's a lot of forges and mining that happen in like the mountainous areas and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the mining
they could even like vent the heat like through like piping systems to like heat the homes and stuff.
Yeah. Like it's there's a lot of underground stuff that happens there. At least that's what I was picturing. Obviously, there's
if
overground
that's what you
stuff.
were picturing, then you being the DM, that's what is.
Yes, it was just not discussed with anyone.
That's what I was picturing. That's what I was hoping for.
That's what I was thinking, but maybe not. I don't know.
Well, you're the one that gets to design it, Dan. So if that's what you were picturing, then have it.
Yeah. Shut up. Let's put it this way. Ariel and I talk about things, and then things change like 5 minutes later because we can't remember what we said before, or she remembers better than I do. So I'm like, well, maybe it's this way, but that's not what you said before. Like, okay.
Well, I got a different idea after I stopped talking to you.
Exactly. Yep.
Brain kept thinking just because conversation was over.
Right. Just because it was thinking wrong.
Me think why waste time say lot word when few word do trick.
Shut up, Kevin.
Someday when me president, you see.
Good show.
Wasn't a bad Kevin there either.
Yeah, it was really good. It was really good. My brother does it pretty good too.
Oh, dude, I believe it.
Yeah. He played Kevin in a video that we made for our youth group.
Beautiful.
We did a whole Office episode on in one of our silly videos that we made for the sock from Woonsocket. But anyway,
don't look it up, or do.
Yeah, no, look it up. It's funny. Sort of.
I'll go with it's cringy like early 2000s
YouTube
era
like, yeah.
YouTube content. Like where
Hey, that stuff was good, all
no,
right?
no, I'm just saying we're like nobody really had it fully figured out yet, but they would just throw videos on there
Yeah.
and they were cringy and they were funny and they were weird and they were super awkward.
Let's put it this way. I want to bring it back to those days.
That'd be incredible, but I don't think your channel would be very big.
That's what I wanted to do on our Instagram, but okay.
I'm okay with that, but again.
Okay, so yeah, the tundra will have a lot of mining and
You could even make like a small prison colony up there where it's like, you know what? You've messed up. Go to Siberia.
Yeah.
You go to the gulag. You're going to go up north.
Icewind Dale.
Yeah, you're going to go to Icewind Dale and you're going to mine ore until we have decided you've paid off your debt to society. That's
basically the beginning of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. This is the bucket where our pee freezes.
But where's Jonathan?
We sleep over here and, yeah, that's pretty much it.
I like it. I like it a lot.
It's a great movie.
Yeah, it really was. So yeah, I mean the ore and everything is going to come from the tundra, and there's definitely going to be other areas that people can get the ore from. I haven't fully fleshed that one out either, but yeah. So tundra, maybe some like stone and stuff from like the flatlands and stuff like that.
There's probably also some like decent ore deposits in the canyon.
That's right.
Itself.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, in the actual chasm itself, there.
And if it's close enough to the Underdark, they could even have like open trade with some of the less aggressive and hostile races from the Underdark. Like they could have like a trade route to Svirfneblin, like city. Mm-hmm. The deep gnomes.
Yeah, that's true.
And I mean, deep gnomes love gemstones, so just trade them gemstones for ore.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. That could be fun.
That way, it's not like yes, obviously there are other places where they can get it like up on the surface, but like it's not their ore is not totally self-reliant.
Yeah.
And maybe their more precious stuff comes from deeper in the earth. Like they can't get access to adamantine up here, but they can get it from the deep gnomes.
Yeah.
Deep gnomes.
Deep gnomes.
Svirfnebli.
Yeah. And also like there could be some magical ore down there because of the rift and everything too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So definitely some potential. Yeah.
Cool. I like it. I like it a lot.
I like it a lot. We wanted to thank everyone who submitted questions to our little podcast here. It was very much appreciated. Being able to build out this world is so much fun, and Blake and I are having a blast. Ariel and I are having a blast building this world out.
Your players are having a blast playing in it.
Thanks, man. Thanks. I hope so. But thank you for all of you who are listening to Critical Friendship. And if you have any questions concerning anything we discussed today, you can email us at criticalfriendshippodcast@gmail.com or comment on our Instagram at Critical Friendship Podcast. And we'll try to answer as many questions as we can on our next episode.
We also have a Facebook group.
We also have a Facebook group now. That's true. Find us at Critical Friendship on Facebook. And we actually have a full-on Spotify account now. So
nice.
You can listen there now.
Nice.
But yeah, we'll try to answer those questions on our next episode.
Yeah. Join us next time where, keeping with the spirit of recording in vehicles, we will be doing this while water rafting and trying to keep the equipment dry and the outside sounds outside.
But as for now, dang it, I rolled a nat 1 on giving the outro.